right, everyone, welcome to another episode of History Now, the Future, the show where we take a sharp look at some of the most pressing issues of today using history as our guide and the future as our destination. My name is Corey Bradford, and today we have a very special guest. He's a good friend of mine who does the same thing I do. He does skits on TikTok about history. A couple of months ago, me and him had an idea about doing a podcast all about conspiracy theories and not necessarily reinforcing them, but debunking some of them. And maybe, hey, if there is some truth to this, we might reinforce a little bit of it. And today I'm going to have him on and we're going to talk about our favorite conspiracy theories, our least favorite conspiracy theories, and why are people so obsessed with conspiracy theories in the first place. Please enjoy my guest today, Jake Trumper. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. That was an incredible intro. I really like that aspect of things that are happening today because it's that whole history doesn't always repeat itself, but it often rhymes. That's one of my favorite sayings, and it's something that you see. I mean, anything you want to do, right? When you're talking about like impeachment, it's happened multiple times in the past, so you can use what's happened in the past to help judge what could happen today. It's such a cool aspect, and I'm super excited to be able to once again share audio waves with you and ideas and whatnot, just kind of goof around and talk history.
Yeah, man. We've done this like a multiple times before. We've done
Yep.
different interviews and different things like that. We've collaborated on TikTok, different things like that. So I always have fun talking to you, Jake. So the first question I have for you is, are you a conspiracy theorist?
My dad is definitely. So I get a lot of inspiration from him. He's always got something new that he's discovered, and it's fun listening to him and using him as kind of like a baseboard to kind of judge what is real, what is complete garbage, and what's right in the middle. I
Yeah.
myself am not a conspiracy theorist, but I
Mhm.
do love conspiracies, and I think there is so much. There's such innocent ones. There's very mean, malice, completely fake
Yeah.
ones, and it's
Yeah.
just so interesting to be able to look at them and see which ones are completely fabricated and which ones are based in somewhat of truth. So that is my convoluted answer to say, yes, I'm a massive conspiracy theorist.
What are some of the conspiracies that you grew up like learning from your dad? Like, what are some of the things that maybe when you were younger that he would tell you about, and you'd be like, "Wait a minute, what? Like, what are there a few that you could kind of give us that you kind of grew up listening
Yeah.
to?"
So like any gateway drug, it starts nice and small. It starts simple. It was cryptids. My dad loved cryptids. He loved the Bermuda Triangle. I was all in it. I remember my dad let me do a report about the Bermuda Triangle because teachers like write about something you're interested in. This man was not printing off of like website, like not even Wikipedia. This man was going into chat logs of like not even Reddit. It was next up like Kiwi Farm stuff. I don't know where he was, but it's just these two dudes talking about the Bermuda Triangle, talking about how weird it is, and then the dude signs off being like, "Gotta go to the gym, bro. Talk to you later." And my dad's just reading these to me. I was like, "Dad, where did you get these?" And he's like, "No, it's real." And I just remembered falling in love with the idea of cryptids. I'd buy all the books at the Scholastic book fair of like, oh, here are the weird cryptids that have existed and all of that. And then it gets to obviously the more not so much governmental ones, but then it gets into kind of the aspects of all right, if the government, like hypotheticals basically, of
Hmm.
could they do this? And then it's like, have they done this? And then obviously you get into the president's assassinations. It was a rabbit hole for sure. It's been interesting seeing him, and he's a very jovial, good-hearted guy, so he doesn't usually get too crazy with it.
Yeah.
So it's always been nice. And then my mistake was, oh, conspiracies are fun and interesting to talk about, and then you fall down some very bad rabbit holes on the internet, and you're like, all right, not as fun as I thought. All right,
Oh
gonna
yeah.
just get out of that one. Like the Simpsons conspiracy, not evil or anything, but God, I hate it. It's my oh man, drives me insane. I'm sure we'll talk about that one later because, it makes me mad every time I see it.
We are going to talk extensively about the Simpsons conspiracy, and I knew you were going to bring it up, so I did some research, and we're gonna get into that 100%. But I want to ask you this. Well, first of all, we have a huge similarity here. You went to the Scholastic Book Fair and got books on the conspiracy theories about like Bigfoot and stuff like that. I did the exact same thing. So when I was in fifth grade, there was a book fair at my school, and they had all these like Goosebumps and all these like age
Yeah,
appropriate books. And then for some strange reason, there was a random John F. Kennedy assassination book at my fifth grade book fair. I don't know what it was doing there. And
yeah.
and and we could and we could get a book for free. Like for whatever reason, this was like a book fair for like you could get one book for free. And I was like,
Dude,
I want that one. And my teacher was like, yeah, here. And I was like, okay. And so I went home like in fifth grade and studied the JFK assassination, and I got really deep into it at a very young age.
Yes,
So yeah, that was insane.
dude, I vividly remember it was like just this weird little corner where like if you walk down the aisle, it'd be like the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot. Hey, who actually shot Abraham Lincoln? The deep dark secret about John Wilkes Booth and his alliance to the Freemasons. I was like, oh, that's it. What's a Freemason? You're like in fifth grade, just grabbing the book, dude. I don't know. I know exactly what you're talking about though. That's so funny. That just low key, just sitting in the corner, only for the
Yeah.
weird kids to find, but we stumbled upon them.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I started going down those rabbit holes as well. So tell me more about the Bermuda Triangle, because I remember learning a little bit about it when I was younger, and I remember learning like people would go there and they would like boats would go missing, and then I also remember hearing something weird about people would go there and like their concept of time would be warped and
Yep.
different things like that. So tell me, I haven't read about it in a while, so tell me, and you don't hear about it that much anymore. So tell me like some of the things that you used to learn about the Bermuda Triangle.
So with the Bermuda Triangle, I think it kind of hit that peak of popularity in mainstream stuff when it started appearing in TV shows, right? So you've
Yeah.
got like Scooby Doo did an entire episode about the Bermuda Triangle. You had a few like of the reality TV show like Boat People doing that kind of stuff. So it hit that peak of popularity mostly because again, internet really helped revitalize so many conspiracy theories, people talking about them and stuff. And the Bermuda Triangle's been that thing that people have always been moderately interested in. If you went to like your library, it'd be in the books next to again the Loch Ness Monster, etc. The concept of it is it ghosts or is it aliens? Is kind of the two big things people debate about. So a lot of pilots, you're right, they'd be like, this pilot said this. It would be they would lean towards, oh, it's aliens because I saw these ships while like these ships next to me as I was flying through and all of a sudden 3 hours passed and I was in this smoke and then now I'm right back to where I started. Then you've got the ships who they said when they would go through they would see other ghost ships. I can't remember the off the top of my head one of the biggest most famous cargo ships that went missing. It even shows up in the Scooby-Doo movie that does it with the ghost pirates in the Bermuda
Yeah.
Triangle. Like, that is the biggest one that gets referenced. People are saying that one became a ghost ship. The aspect of like, okay, so for some reason when it's in the water it's ghosts, when it's in the sky it's aliens.
It's
That's
aliens.
probably my most dumbed down fun version of it. Is it's just in that area, and the Bermuda Triangle is not a very small. It is a massive like area, and that's the thing is a lot of conspiracies, it can't fit that small little
Yeah.
aspect of because I feel like if everyone was like, oh, in this 1 mile radius, we've had 90 ships and 100 planes go missing, you've got a problem. But when you're looking at hundreds of mile radius, it's like, okay, it's just rocky waters, more
Yeah.
dangerous area, storms,
Yeah.
etc., happen more
Mhm.
likely in here. But
Mhm.
it's more fun to be like, what if it's ghosts and aliens in that whole area? So that's where, as a kid, it was fun, fun believing that. But as I get older, I'm like, okay, maybe it's just a more dangerous area when it comes to
Yeah.
storms and water. But I like to believe in ghost pirates, so that's usually my go-to is ghost pirates are in the Bermuda Triangle.
I totally remember that Scooby Doo movie and that
Yeah,
reference to it. That was one of the things. And then I remember when I was a kid. I don't know if you remember this old cartoon. It's called Rocco's Modern Life, and they did a whole episode about the Bermuda Triangle, and like they would go to it and they would like age, like they were young, and then all of a sudden they were elderly, and then they would go back to being young. It was really weird. I
it's
just thought it was like so unusual when I was a kid. I was like, I don't want to drive a ship through there. Like I don't know what's going on, but that's not normal. I don't know what's happening there.
was Rocco the dog with the shirt,
Yeah, yeah. He was
like the
like
little
a well,
Hawaiian shirt?
he looked like a dog, but he did have the Hawaiian shirt. He's actually like a marsupial or something like that. He was some type
Yes,
of kangaroo type
yeah,
animal. But yeah, it came out when I was really, really young, and I just remember that episode. That was like you said, there were a lot of cartoons and TV
yep,
shows that used to talk about the Bermuda Triangle a lot in like the '90s, early 2000s, and
yep,
then it kind of like disappeared for a minute. Maybe that was by design. Maybe the
yeah.
powers that be were
We're getting too
tired
close.
of us talking about it.
Yep, I
And
believe you. That's yes. And what back to the Rocco thing real quick is they actually combined two conspiracy. It was the Fountain of Youth and the
yeah,
Bermuda Triangle because there
yeah.
is. If you want to talk icebergs of conspiracies, right? You've got the main idea of the conspiracy, and then there's a million other beliefs.
Yeah.
Some believe that the Fountain of Youth is in the Bermuda Triangle, but then the question is was that always a core belief, or is that just like a thing where enough kids saw that episode and they now tie Bermuda Triangle, Fountain
Right.
of Youth, and now that they're older talking about it, is it just a cartoon combined two things, which we've seen multiple times where like
Yeah.
TV will be like, let's take some urban legends, combine them together, and then the generation that grew up watching them, now they just believe that's one urban legend. It's not multiple different things, which has been
Yeah.
cool to see as well with certain conspiracies. Is I can't remember what it's called. What is it when the Mandela effect,
Mandela
where
effect. Yeah.
you a mass group of people watch this one thing and either misremember or again a TV show makes a joke about something and they all
Yeah.
since they're watching it because with TV compared to YouTube nowadays YouTube you're watching so many different things it's hard to
Yeah.
have that entire group mind think.
Yeah.
But back in the 90s and 2000s, especially as kids,
Oh
we were
yeah.
all watching the exact same thing on Nickelodeon at 9 p.m.
100%.
Central Time and then 8 p.m. your time, right? We all
Yeah.
saw it. Now
Yeah.
it's all that group think of do you guys remember this? And a lot of us
Yeah.
don't go back and rewatch it to correct it. We just
Mhm.
say what we remembered. We all agree. And now we're like, oh, yeah, Bermuda Triangle is the fountain of youth, which was
Yeah.
never the original aspect
Mhm.
of it. But now, thanks to that, it's a group think. Now a lot of people believe it. So that's also another interesting thing with conspiracies in modern day is how much TV and pop culture has redesigned aspects of certain conspiracy theories.
Really interesting because I didn't even know that originally that Fountain of Youth wasn't related to the Bermuda Triangle, but maybe you're right because of that show or maybe a couple of other shows that started combining it, we started getting it conflated. I think it was like Ponce de Leon or something that was looking for
Yeah,
the Fountain of Youth, if I'm not mistaken.
for some reason, bro, I was about to say Cortez, and that is not
Yeah,
correct. That,
I
yeah,
can
yeah,
I couldn't remember DeSoto. Like I'm just thinking of all these
yeah,
explorer names. I'm like I can't remember which one was actually doing it, but that's really interesting. And then you mentioned something else. This idea about like pop culture and television influencing conspiracy theories, and then you mentioned the Mandela effect. When I think of the Mandela effect, the first thing I always think about is the fact that for some strange reason, '90s kids all believe that we saw this movie with Sinbad as a
yeah,
genie back in the
yep,
'90s, and apparently it was not Sinbad, it was Shaq, it was Shaquille
yep,
O'Neal. He was the
yep.
genie, and I do vaguely remember that. But I also swear, I swear, I remember a movie, so a TV movie or some kind of smaller movie with Sinbad as a genie, and he claims it never happened. There's no record of it, but we all seem to remember it. And now with AI and Photoshop and things like that, you've had people try to create like the fake cover for it, and
They're
like
gaslighting you to be like, no, I knew
yeah,
I was right. Yep. I
yeah,
and I think there's the thing with like our minds as kids is they're
mhm,
so moldable, right?
yeah,
So again, there was probably something with Sinbad where it was genie adjacent. He did
yeah,
something. He granted a wish. He did something in
yeah,
some short in something, and we all saw it. It was on
mhm,
Nick at Night, a 30-second little ad where it was an ad for something, and he made something appear by snapping his fingers.
yeah,
We all kind of had that belief. One person then uses social media now to make a viral video claiming that that happened using a Photoshop thing because they know it'll get them views. They think it's
yeah,
funny, or maybe they genuinely believe it, but it helps all of our brains because our brains, just like we all want to see faces, right? We want to see a
yeah,
face in everything. We also want to
yeah,
be able to connect everything. We want to connect with each other. We want to connect on ideas. So we're so willing to believe it if we have that vague memory, especially when it comes to connecting with humans. We're like, you remember that too? Oh, we've got to be right. It's that unity of no, they, and this is with conspiracies, they
yeah,
can't tell us we're wrong because I trust my own belief, even if our own belief is being corrupted by a mismemory, a mismass memory. Because again, in the 90s and 2000s, we were all watching the same thing at the
yep,
exact same time. So we
yep,
can easily gaslight each other into believing something happened off of a vague thing that we're misremembering because we were nine. So
yeah.
it's a really cool concept, especially with the Mandela effect, because it's so easy to be like, I vaguely remember that. And if you vaguely remember that and 5,000 other people vaguely remember that, must be true.
Yeah.
It's a such a cool concept.
You want to go down a real rabbit hole. There's this movie, I think it's called Totally Killer, and
Okay.
it's kind of like it's a cool Halloween movie, and it's a time travel movie, and it's a mixture of time travel and horror. It's like a recent movie. This movie just came out like last year or so. It's an Amazon Prime movie. And in the movie, this girl goes back in time to stop a killer from coming after her mom. So she has to go back to like the '80s, and her mom's like a kid, like a teenager in the '80s. So she's like befriends her mom, and it kind of feels like Back to the
Yeah.
Future. Feels like Back to the
Her
Future a little bit.
her friend builds the time machine and then the
Yeah,
killer who they're getting chased or something and the killer stabs the time machine and it takes her and the killer back in time, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
It's a pretty cool movie. And one thing, the reason why I mentioned it is because it talks about the Mandela effect. So this is like a really interesting concept, kind of spin they put on it, was this idea of the Mandela effect is caused by time travelers. Like, so when someone goes back in time, changes something, and then butterfly effect, it changes all these different things in the future, but then people still have this like faint memory of what it was originally. And that's where the Mandela effect comes from. It's like, okay, we've changed this timeline. So now things are different in the future, right? But people still have this faint memory. It's like, wait a minute, I remember that group having a different name. I remember that band having a song that doesn't really exist. It's because it did exist in a particular timeline, but it's been
Mhm.
erased from our timeline. And that's the reason why we all think it's different now. Now, obviously, I don't believe in that one
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
I don't think the physics supports it,
Uh-huh.
but it's a really cool concept for a movie. It's a really, you can really play with that creatively for some type of written
Dude,
work. It's really cool.
I 100% agree. That is way more of a fun concept than being like, "Oh, hey, the Mandela effect." No one was really talking about it until the last 20 years, which would make sense because 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s we had TV, we all
Yeah.
misremembered stuff, and then now we have an internet platform to spread that misinformation. That's way less cool than someone went back in time and changed the Berenstain Bears to the Bernstein Bears or whatever it's called. That's way cooler than, "Oh, we misremembered it because it was spelt funny and we were dumb kids, and then enough people on the internet who are famous joked about it enough, and now we all believe it." It's so much more fun. I love that concept because it reminds me of that Beatles movie, the
Yeah.
Yesterday or whatever, about that guy where
Yes.
he lives
Yeah.
where the Beatles never existed. So he makes
Yeah.
those concepts are so much more fun, and that's what makes the like fun, innocent conspiracy theories. I don't
Mhm.
think there's anything wrong with being like, nope, I believe that the Mandela effect is because of time travel. I don't think that inherently hurts anybody. I don't think it makes you a bad Like it's just a
Yeah.
fun conspiracy to joke around with.
Yeah.
It is, and that's what makes a lot of these ones like Bigfoot, right? If you look
Yeah.
back, I think it was in the 1930s, some buddies admitted to making the Mullins and another guy, 1930s, they went, "Hey, we just made these Bigfoot um, plaster foots,
Yeah.
and we wanted to just see what would happen." And
Yeah.
it went viral. We love it. That's a bunch of fun. I think that's completely innocent, and people still talk about Bigfoot to this day. You got TV shows about it. Or in Britain in the 1970s and 80s, you
Mhm.
had crop circles popping up. Everyone's
Yeah.
talking about crop circles. They're like, it's a big thing. And then two guys come along. They're like, hey, every summer we just made like 20 of these throughout Britain because we thought it'd be funny. And every time it popped on the news, we'd drink and laugh about it. But
Yeah.
people were like, no, no, that's a cover up. It's real. It's real. You guys are lying. It's real. Shut up. It's innocent and fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those kinds of conspiracies are just so like, is it a misremembering? Did someone purposely spread misinformation to do this innocent, funny prank? Those are so fun, man. I
Yeah.
genuinely love any cryptid, any time travel. That stuff is so just unique, fun, and I feel like only something humans could come up with.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. It's crazy. Like the person who like faked it will literally say, "I faked it. I did this just to see if it was good
Here's
on the
proof.
news. Here's proof." And then they're like, "No, you're wrong. You're being paid by the CIA. We know this
Yeah.
is real." And it's like, I'm literally the guy who invented the myth. Is that really where the Bigfoot comes from? Those guys in the 30s? Is that where that kind of starts?
Yes. So the concept. So what's really cool about all of this stuff is technically you could trace it back so much further. The
Yeah.
idea of a big mountain creature living in the woods has
Mhm.
always existed.
Yeah.
The idea of because you've got like the Aztecs with the symbols burned into the ground, the equivalent of like crop circles. It's always existed, and the whole like again groupthink of minds is insane. How it like we all, but the American version of Bigfoot of
Mhm.
here is a huge foot in the ground plastered was made in the 1930s by God. I know his last one of them. Their last name was Mullins, and it was a
Yeah.
couple other dudes. They just put together these plasters because they thought it'd be really cool. They just wanted to see where it would go. It was a
Yeah.
prank, but also an effort to become famous, and it
Yeah.
worked super well. But that's what started the whole American version of Bigfoot. The idea of creatures in the woods, they could look like anything, been around forever.
Oh
There is
yeah.
no, yeah, but that specific aspect, and they came forward and said it. They're like, we goofed, we made this. Like this is all fabricated, but it had already ran wild. There was
Yeah.
no there. Pandora's box was open. There was no
Yeah.
going back. And then with
Wow.
crop circles, it was two buddies in Britain who admitted to doing it, and they even showed how they did it. but people claimed that it wasn't right because theirs looked too crushed compared to the other ones that looked like they were just lightly flattened. So it's very
Huh.
interesting how even when people will admit to doing it, again, they're going to get people be like, nope, nope, you're lying. So crop circles, again, created in the like 80s, 70s, and 80s in
Yeah.
Britain, but Britain and America, very Western countries, we're
Yeah.
both going to see the same cryptid, you know? So
Yeah.
both of those were from like the 30s to the 80s are when a lot of cryptids went viral because not a lot going on, right? So buddies
Yeah.
want to do some jokes, and if it catches on, there's just enough media coverage for
Yeah.
it to blow up across the Western ideology and conspiracy groups.
It's like the early version of going viral, of like having
100%.
a story go viral. That's crazy.
Yeah, because if you want to now you could go viral. We've seen it. You go viral talking about presidents. You know, you can go viral talking about the small stuff. Back
Yeah.
then, it needed to be headline worthy,
Yeah.
right? And that's why you had God, was it called World News that would do all those
Yeah.
fake
Yeah.
viral
I
with
remember
like,
that.
yeah, vampire baby, blah blah blah. You had to have those crazy headlines, and obviously, World News, everyone knew it was kind of like a joke, fake thing.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
do you get onto? How does your thing get onto radio shows? How does your
Mhm.
thing get onto actual mainstream news? You have to quietly just let something small happen. You can't be like,
Yeah.
I caught Bigfoot. I've caught this
Yeah.
creature because it's easily disproven. But you could be like, look at these plastered feet. Look at these crop circles that were made. It's you had to be just believable enough, but just crazy enough to go viral. So you
Yeah.
had to have something that would actually pull headlines compared to now. You go viral doing a video if you're a good looking guy, you know?
Yeah. Basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, and then I assume that's how most people go viral these days.
Oh, yeah.
Um, the cryptids thing, the one that I think that is the most interesting to me is like the idea of the Yeti, which I think comes from like Russia, like it comes from a different part of the world. And the only reason I think that that would be interesting and that that could be real is because it feels like a Soviet era experiment gone horribly wrong. I'm sure
Yeah.
dates back before that. I'm sure there's rumors about that, like this abominable snowman or whatever they call it. I'm sure it goes back further than that, but I can just see like the Soviets trying to do something weird, make like an Ultraman, and it just turns into a monster, and then he just goes unleashes on Siberia or something, and someone saw it, and it's like, oh, that's where the Yeti comes from. Like I can just see that happening.
Do you know the Russian camper trip, the story about where some people think a Yeti took them all out?
No, I don't. I haven't heard
So,
that one.
oh man, I need to start having a computer next to me when I start saying these wild conspiracies so I can get everything correct. I believe it's like 9 campers in
Yeah.
Russia. They go on a massive camping trip. One of them gets injured, has to go back, doesn't hear from his friends. They go, and all 8 of the friends are dead. What's crazy
Wow.
about it is first they go to the tents, and the tents are cut from the inside, like someone was trying to look out.
Hmm.
Then all the bodies are missing clothes. Like they took their clothes off for some reason. One body is just destroyed in a huge snow pile. Two
Uh-huh.
bodies are next to a fire, like a fire was trying to be started, but then they died of hypothermia. Another
Uh-huh.
body's just like crushed. And they're like, how did that get crushed? And the other 3 bodies are in this like little cave smashed together. And everyone's like, what happened? There's the rational thing of like, okay, so we think they got hypothermia. They went crazy. One person tried to climb a tree. They fell. The other 2 died from hypothermia. He hit his head while he had that. These 3 tried to go into a thing. Snow collapsed on them, crushing
Yeah.
them, and
Yeah.
the ocean's
Yeah.
melted since. But Abominable Snowman killing a bunch of hikers sounds way cooler. It is a,
Yeah.
I highly recommend looking deeper into it. It
Mhm.
is a, no matter even the factual side of it is
Yeah.
still gruesome as heck. It is
Yeah. Yeah.
wild.
That's
But
insane. Yeah,
yeah.
I had never heard that one, but I but I had heard these rumors about attacks in Russia and places like that from some type of snowman-like creature. Very, but like you said, the way you just described what probably happened, like some type of avalanche or snow piles and hypothermia, you just didn't get the resources, couldn't start the fire. Like that makes sense, right? That sounds like what's probably happened. But then
Yeah.
people's minds kind of jump, and I think it's like a human thing for us to believe that there's something more, that there's something
Oh, yeah.
bigger, that there's something else that happened. Because I think when something like that happens, especially when it's like a tragic event like that, just the most logical thing, oh man, the snow got too heavy and they just couldn't survive. That's like, it's like, it kind of almost like, it kind of short sells it or something. And then like,
Yep.
and then when you think in your mind, says, wait a minute, what if this crazy creature came by and
Yeah.
they're responsible for this and they're doing it to other people and they're still out there somewhere? That I think gives people this weird sort of sense of, okay, there's more. It's almost like, the universe is mostly entropy. It's mostly just like random things happening, but that
Yeah.
kind of gives them like, oh no, it happened for this reason. It was very specific, and we could have stopped it if we could have just stopped the Yeti. And it's like, I don't know. I think it gives people almost some sort of comfort to think that
Yeah.
like something crazy like that made it happen rather than it was just a random accident.
Yes, humans are problem solvers.
Yeah.
We want to solve this problem. And if we didn't witness something firsthand, if
Hmm.
we don't like the answer we're given, even if it's correct, we will seek a different answer. That is one of the biggest things of the human mind. That's what's gotten us so far. That's what's gotten us to where we are, right? We're told one thing, we don't like that answer. We're going to find a different way to do it. And hell yeah, now we got skyscrapers that can be built on sand and not
Yeah.
collapse. It's insane. It's wonderful. But it also can take you to a completely different direction where they're like, we believe this is what happened. Everything lines up. It all goes there. We're like, we didn't see it firsthand. We don't like the answer. So we're going to come up with this reasoning.
Yeah.
It's what creates all these ideas. It's what creates really cool urban legends as well,
Yeah.
though.
No.
It's one of those things where, like in Supernatural, right? I'm not sure if
Mhm.
you've ever
Mhm.
seen it.
I've
Me and my wife.
I've seen my wife is a huge Supernatural fan, so I've been forced to see 95% of it.
It's opposite. I'm the Supernatural fan. And I make my wife watch it, and she's just like, "Okay, I'll watch it." So, but like they're like what they call the. I still don't know to this day. In season 1, the Wendigo,
Yeah.
they call it something else. I don't know if they're
Yeah.
specifically calling it because they don't want to say Wendigo,
Mhm. Mhm.
or if they're just in the show, that's what they're going to call it. It
Yeah.
shows that urban legends are told in so many different ways that even the pronunciation's different. The
Yeah.
ideas are different, right? Because the Wendigo in the video game Dead by Dawn or Dead by Dawn or something is going to be
Mhm.
completely different than what Supernatural shows. So it just creates all these different urban legends because then you've got it's a trickle down effect of
Yeah.
okay, I don't like your answer, so I'm going to create this urban legend. This is my new answer. Then someone's like, well, I don't like your urban legend because it does this wrong. That doesn't make sense. So here's my urban legend of your urban legend. And it just
Yeah.
spirals. And now you've got a million different urban legends told through media, told through
Yeah.
word of mouth, told through social media. It is such a cool way to create these legends, but it also just goes to show how flawed the human mind is of don't like your thing, so I'm going to make my own kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
And sometimes it's done unintentionally, like, the
yeah.
telephone
Oh,
game. It's like, oh, we misheard it. We heard it differently.
yeah.
So when we tell it to someone, we're forgetting some aspect of it or we're adding some aspect of it almost by accident. And sometimes that can keep happening with a group of people. And then once enough time passes too, and it's getting passed down to different generations, it just starts taking on this whole new thing and this whole new
100%.
life. And it wasn't even that originally.
I mistold you that Yeti story. There's no way I got that right. Like there's things I missed and it was
Yeah.
unintentional, but that's the
Yeah,
thing is
exactly.
humans are also storytellers. We want to tell you what we heard,
Yeah.
but just through unintentional. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's but like we just mistelling. And now
Yeah.
you now have my version of the story. If you don't go out and seek the story yourself, you now carry my version that you might change a little bit. It is such a cool
Exactly.
aspect.
It's very, very interesting. What is a conspiracy that you 100% or let's say 90, 95% believe in? Like something that's just like, okay, that right there, maybe not even that you believe in like the
Yeah,
urban legend surrounding it, but that you believe that it is a conspiracy, that whatever that whatever the official record is telling us is definitely not accurate.
that is crazy. Okay. I should have been more prepared for this. Anything that involves sea creatures, anything that
Really?
involves the sea, I am much more likely to believe just because we've explored so little that when
Yes.
someone's like, the megalodon could still be alive, and a lot of sources are like, no, there's just no chance. The food source, all of this, and I'm like, that is
Mhm.
completely valid, but there is still just so much to explore. Who knows?
Yeah.
Or the aspect of I really don't believe in mermaids. I'm gonna be honest, but like maybe like a manatee, another
Yeah.
version of a manatee that lives way lower in the water. It's not gonna be some beautiful lady with a tail, but another species of manatee that at one point in time was a little bit closer, and they've just gone further and further down. More
Yeah.
likely to be so sea stuff. I'm very more inclined to believe. Uh, Space stuff, inclined to believe aliens. I'm not so much as a fan of they visited us, but like
Yeah.
being up in the sky. I just there's no way that they don't, right?
Yeah.
There's just
Oh,
too much.
yeah. They
There's
have to exist. Like
yeah,
aliens have to exist. If we're the only beings of this level in the entire universe, first of all, that I think there's a quote. I think it was Ray Bradbury, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, said that there's two possibilities. Either we're not alone in the universe, or we are, and they're both equally terrifying possibilities. Because if we are alone, like what? Wait, that makes no sense. It makes no sense that just this planet is the only one that can support this kind of life. When you think about how vast just
Yep.
this galaxy is, let alone the billions of other galaxies out there, like that's insane. But the idea that there is something else out there, and that one day we could cross paths, that's pretty scary too. Because like, what if it's like way more advanced than us, and they just say, you know what, let's just take Earth over, and it's like, okay, that's about just equally scary. But and one of them has to be true. And that's what's
100.
so crazy about it.
Yep. And that's where, so basically, just when you get into the more unexplored stuff, I'm a sucker. I'm like, I can't say no, because there's no viable evidence. There's a lot of viable evidence when you get into like political conspiracies. There's a
Yeah.
lot more you can lay out. And you can be like, well, here's
Mhm.
this record, this record, this record. Are you saying this conspiracy just because you heard one story and you like it and
Mhm.
you haven't done the research yourself? Well, here's some more research to maybe help debunk what you said. When it comes to like mermaids could be real and they look like this, I can't be like 100% no, because we
Yeah.
haven't explored. Like I don't have all the evidence to prove. It's same with aliens. Like I'm like I
Yeah.
can't 100% say no. When it comes to like more humanized conspiracies, right?
Mhm.
Anything when you're dealing with like the 60s, 70s, and 80s,
Mhm.
I am also less inclined to believe our government. And don't get me wrong, I don't trust our government today either. But like back then,
Yeah.
it was almost felt less malicious. It just felt like they were wacky, goofy little guys. They're like, all right, we got to take out Castro, put some poison in his shoe. Oh, he likes to go snorkeling. Make this one really pretty shell have poison on it, so hopefully he grabs it because it looks pretty and he dies from poison.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. That's
Yeah.
insane. What are we doing? So that just as like if we were willing to do that,
Mhm.
what else were we willing to do during those times that just haven't been released yet, right? When you get
Yeah.
into like the MK Ultra stuff,
Oh
right?
yeah.
There's certain stuff where 20 years ago it would have been like, what do you mean? They would never do something like that. And now it
Mhm.
comes out, it's like, no, they just like any other country, we did wacky, stupid, horrible tests on innocent people.
Yeah.
That's
Oh yeah.
and that's
All the time. All the
yeah, and
time.
that's the thing is it's still happening to this day, and
Oh yeah.
someday it will be released, right? But for
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
we don't know. But so that's where it comes into as I currently, if it's something that you tell me about the CIA from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, I am more inclined to believe that conspiracy compared to other conspiracies about the FBI. I'm less willing to believe than conspiracies about the CIA. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's yeah, just based on all the messed up stuff they've done. But
Yeah.
then when you get into like, but then the FBI also like what they did against Martin Luther King Jr. because
Yep.
Hoover just
Yep.
had such a hard on for him to try to bring
Yep.
him down.
Yeah.
That's another whole thing where
Mhm.
years ago people have been like, "What do you mean the FBI did not have it?" Like I'm pretty sure that was considered a conspiracy. They're like, "No, the
Mhm.
FBI was not targeting Martin Luther King Jr. He was cheating, and they just knew." I was like, Why is that the FBI's concern? Why is
Yeah.
Hoover literally getting hotel rooms right next door?" And is like, so
Yeah.
that's where it gets into. I don't trust the government, but I don't. God, how do I? I think they're more inept than people believe. My biggest
Yeah.
conspiracy is that the government is more inept than you believe. If you believe the government was behind this massive thing that was a huge, crazy success, I don't know if they're that well planned. Like the only part of the government that I think is well organized and can take someone down is the IRS.
The IRS.
And
I was literally gonna say the same thing.
everything else is pretty inept, especially when you deal with it like my family is in they help like the foster care system, right? It
Yeah.
moves so slow. There's so
Mhm.
many bureaucrats. There's so much slow moving. So it's like
Yeah.
the government as a whole just moves so slowly. How on earth did they plan to take out JFK and they all agree on how to do it and all do this and it doesn't get completely leaked and proven wrong just because
Yeah.
the government has so much, they stab each other in the backs. They move so slowly. It's bureaucrats. It just doesn't make sense how they can make something that massive happen, just
Yeah.
witnessing how inept they are. So then it's easier for them as a government to be like, why debunk these things that make us look big and scary when we're actually very inept? The stuff they do behind the scenes against the American people, I think is 100% real. Like
Real. Yeah.
they do not have your best interest inside. They want as much power as possible. But the whole
100%.
they took out the president. I'm like, I don't know about that one.
You just said so many things. Like, first of all, that last point, like I think the government, the CIA, they allow these conspiracy theories to fester because it makes them look so much more capable than they
Yeah.
really are. It makes them look so much more dangerous than they really are. I saw this. I think it was like a Instagram Reels, like one of these like little meme videos where it was like DJ Khaled or something, and at the top of it, it was like the CIA for no reason sometimes, and it's just DJ Khaled saying, "You know what? The rumors are true. Yes, the
Yep.
rumors are all true. Like every few years, the CIA just says, you know what? We did do
100%.
this back in the 60s. Like we did it. The rumors are true. Okay. Not all rumors are true, but that one is true.
That
Like
was real.
I was just like, that is the CIA. Like every few years, they just like admit, oh yeah, we did this thing. And like you
Yeah.
said, and then 20, 30 years from now, they'll admit to doing something, right now. And it'll be like, oh, I told you, I knew that was happening. But something interesting that you said about, their ability to be able to take out the president or something like that. So, like I said earlier in the podcast, I got this book in fifth grade about JFK. I went down these rabbit holes about the JFK conspiracy theories. Have you ever heard the Secret Service conspiracy theory about JFK?
So the one that I know about it when it comes to being like inept, the person just popping up in my window in the back, that scared the hell out of me. Okay, that was terrifying. Someone else is just in the building, but that scared me. I was like, oh my god, someone's here. So the one
Yeah,
that
it's the
I know,
CIA.
yeah, oh god, it's actually real. They are not inept. I'm getting taken out. Um, the one that I know, which I don't think probably would have been covered in the book, was that there was a huge party with the secret. Did you say Secret Service?
Yeah.
There was a huge party for the Secret Service the night before, and they all got drunk and they were partying, and they didn't have time to check all the windows because of that party. And they actually, due to their ineptness, they just didn't check all the windows correctly because there's too many of them, and half of them were like hung over the next day. So that's the one that I know of. Like, oh wow, they were not acting at 100% like they should have. But I'm assuming there's a way cooler conspiracy.
That was actually really good. Hadn't heard that one. And this is crazy because I've gone so down far these rabbit holes and I hadn't heard that one. So I'm actually kind of like, wow, why haven't I heard that one? And it makes a lot of sense, right? Like they just weren't on their game that day and that's how they missed that. But the other one, and it kind of actually combines with that one pretty well, is this concept. And I remember hearing this when I was in high school and was like, oh my God, it really changes your whole perspective on things.
Mhm.
The idea that when Kennedy is getting shot, it is Lee Harvey Oswald. He is in the Texas school book building doing everything that the Warren Commission said he did, but that the actual kill shot that seems to have come from a different angle came from a inexperienced Secret Service agent who,
Oh,
when the shooting starts, he's like, oh shoot, someone's shooting at the president. Let me get my gun. He accidentally pulls it out and accidentally fires it just randomly, and that random bullet is the one that kills JFK. And
wow.
and then they do the investigation, they figure this out, and they're like, "Well, we can't admit that one of our own Secret Service agents killed the president. We got the Cold War going on. We would look like the stupidest country on earth."
Yep.
So we know Lee Harvey Oswald was shooting. We know he started it. He probably would have killed him anyway. Blame him for the whole thing. We never mentioned the Secret Service aspect of it. And then they didn't think that the Zapruder film, which shows the actual shooting, and it kind of looks like it's coming from two different angles. They
Yeah.
didn't think that existed. So when they came out with like the Warren Commission and everything, like they didn't really even think that existed. And so when they found that video, it was like that film, I should say, it was like, well, this complicates things, but most people will never see this, so let's not. We don't even care. We'll just stick to our story, and that'll be it. But then later, when people actually start, because I don't think actual people, like actual citizens, saw the Zapruder film until like the mid to late 70s. I think Geraldo Rivera is one of the first people that shows it on TV, like 76. So by that time, it's so many years has passed. The CIA is probably thinking, who cares? Nobody, well, not even the CIA, the government is just thinking, who cares at this point?
Yeah.
But like, and I'm not saying that actually happened, but if that happened, it takes this big, complicated, the CIA took him out and they're so nefarious and they can get so many things done, and it reduces it to what you said. They're really a lot less inept, or a lot less capable, I should say, than
Yep.
we think, but they allow these conspiracies to fester just to make it seem like, well, yeah, we are that powerful. We could take a president out, when really some Secret Service agent just accidentally shot him. And
I
I'm not saying that happened. It's just like, if that were to be true, it's like it changes your whole perspective on like the entire course of American history.
Dude,
In a
that's my
way.
new favorite JFK. I believe it. I'm sold. I'm in. I believe that now. Actually, that is absolutely incredible because there are two of the biggest moments that have affected the Americans' population and
Mhm.
a view of the government and the government's view on how it wants to look to other countries is the Cold War and 9/11. That's
Oh
going to
yeah,
be two
yeah.
of the biggest thing, and they both feed into each other as well.
Mhm.
It's that a
Mhm.
perception of the American government, right? Tragedies are happening.
Mhm.
They would rather have the idea of, and this gets a little morbid, but like in 2001, it's there. You have all these conspiracies, right? Where they're like,
Yeah.
it was an inside job,
Mhm.
right? As a government, would you want your people to be like, no, we were just really inept in airports and our security was just for a first world country that has this many people traveling all the time, our standards for airports were horrific and laughable. Like we did not have
Yeah.
proper training, we did not
Yeah.
do anything. Or, yeah, we're so powerful, we could do this and no one can stop us. That it's it goes to it's just so crazy to think about how many things the government probably could have stopped, should have stopped. You look at all this stuff where it's like something happens, they're like, that person was on our radar. It's like, all right,
Mhm.
well, why didn't you
Well,
get
yeah,
it?
just
So it's just, and that gets to a whole subsection of
yeah.
conspiracies that are just so depressing and sad that it would
Yeah.
bring down this
Yeah.
whole vibe of us talking about Bigfoot having a good time in the woods. But it is interesting to see where the one true through line for me when I look at any of this stuff is
Mhm.
a human error.
Yeah.
But instead of admitting a human error and looking weak to Russia, China, all this stuff, they're taking a page out of Russia and China's book of,
Yeah.
oh, we make a massive mistake. Yeah, cover that up. I don't
Mhm.
care if people believe it's a conspiracy and that we're evil and that we're an evil, evil government that is controlling our people.
Mhm.
That sounds better to our enemies rather
Yeah.
than, oh, we're making human mistakes. The amount of
Yeah.
human mistakes that happen in China that the Chinese people don't even hear about and that we
Oh, yeah.
barely even get info on, or
Mhm.
with Russia, back to
Mhm.
Russia doing crazy experiments and making the Yeti. That sounds believable because they were doing wacky, crazy, dumb stuff. They were doing
Yeah.
MK Ultra stuff the exact same time we were. We were competing on who can come up with the dumbest experiment that hurts its own people faster and making human errors. But instead of admitting to those human errors, it sounds better to be like, no, we were playing 5D chess better
Mm.
than you guys. We're not
Yeah.
idiots. We no, our own agent didn't just take out our president. What do you mean? No, it's a massive conspiracy. You sent that guy over to us.
Yeah.
It is, yeah, for me, human error is the biggest through line for any conspiracy that bases it. And where there's smoke, there's fire, right?
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
that's where it's, I think a lot of the conspiracies are just rooted in human error. We're embarrassed to admit that it's human error. So we're going to make it seem like it's some big, crazy thing.
Oh no, I 100% agree. Human error and just basic coincidences, just really huge
Yeah.
coincidences. One thing, so you mentioned 9/11, and we're gonna get back. We were gonna get back to this. I say this sarcastically. Your favorite conspiracy theory, Simpsons related
Oh!
conspiracies. The big one with the Simpsons is that they predicted 9/11, and it all comes from this episode because I used to be
With
a
Art
huge
holding
Simpsons
up
fan.
a picture and the poster in the background. Yeah.
Yeah, he's holding up a magazine. It has like $9 or something on it, and the nine is like right next to the World Trade Center, so it looks like it's saying 9/11. And it kind of holds on it for a couple of seconds in this weird way. And this is in like '97 is when this episode comes out, and it goes from there. The crazy thing about it is in that particular episode of The Simpsons, they go to New York City, and the World Trade Center plays a prominent role in the episode. But another thing, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, is during that episode, there's a period where Bart and Maggie or whatever, they're on the subway and this crazy guy comes up to him and the crazy guy says something about he's getting messages through his teeth from the Pentagon. So he mentions the Pentagon in the same episode with this World Trade Center conspiracy in The Simpsons. And if you're a conspiracy theorist lover, you're just sitting there salivating like, oh my God, they knew it all. Simpsons writers did 9/11. And it's like, but the crazy thing about it is these writers, these people who wrote for The Simpsons, a lot of them went to Harvard, Yale.
Yep.
They're extremely intelligent people. They're thinking about all these different things. It's just coincidence. They come up with these ideas that sound so absurd at the time. And then later, 10, 20 years later, something happens and it's like, oh, The Simpsons predicted. It's like, no, they were just really clever writers. And a lot of what they were doing was predicting things, or not predicting things, but writing things that would sound absurd if they actually happened in real life. And
Yep.
it's just they're using their creative wheels turning around to come up with these things. But it's not like they're psychics or that they're in cahoots with the CIA or something.
Yeah.
It's just giant coincidences.
So one of the big things is I see it in every comment. They go, "Oh, well, the Simpsons writers are Freemasons." It's like, all right, okay, calm down, calm down. The Freemason is a fraternity of old rich dudes who like to hang out together in every single state in every single city.
Yeah.
It's not that deep. Um, the thing with the Simpsons, you hit so many awesome points. First one is that came out in 1997. Why on earth are they warning you in a random episode 5 years before it happened or 4
Right.
years before it happens? Then the other aspect of it is if you cast a wide enough net, if
Mm.
you've got a pond and you make a net the exact same size of that pond, you're going to catch some fish. But a majority of the stuff you get is just water. You
Yep.
wasted acid, but that's the whole thing is The Simpsons have so many episodes, so much writing, so many things going on. It's such a big net. 99% of the things is not predicting stuff. That 1% is what people latch on to with social media again because they can put it on there and be like, look at this still image that happened. Isn't that crazy? It's like, yeah, but it's more of a coincidence than a evil prediction. And that's
Mhm.
the biggest thing is, again, that entire episode had multiple coincidences based in
Yep.
a lot of these people probably have never been to New York. There have
Yeah.
been people yelling on the streets of New York that there are lasers targeting their teeth to make them rot. There is a locale on the internet right now talking about that. Um, so the aspect of teeth and government has actually had a weird comment. I don't know why. Maybe it's back to MK Ultra. I don't know. But like that aspect of that. And then the World Trade Center, people act like it was like this big secret building that for some reason no show was ever like, oh my God, this show mentioned the World Trade Center. It's like, yeah. And it's people my age who didn't grow up in the 90s and
Yeah.
realize like the World Trade Center was a massive thing of New York. It was a massive point in New York. Like it wasn't like it was like like almost like an Eiffel Tower of New York.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a
Yeah.
huge, like glorious thing to see. So it's not like,
Yeah.
oh my God, why would a show mention this? It's like because it was like a massive
It's
landmark. There's a reason it was targeted. So that's
yeah.
where and then or they'll be like, "We'll explain how they managed to guess that Trump would run for president." It's like, well, he's been joking about it since the '80s. Like he joked about running against Reagan. He's joked about it for years. He's talked about it. So it's not so much as a prediction. They're just using things that are talked about in popular media during the time. They mention it, and then again, eventually, some of that stuff is going to happen, right? How
Yeah.
many crazy things did happen in those? So, like, let's say the Trump thing happened in episode 5. Well, those first 4 episodes, anything interesting happened in those? No. Anything happened in the 10 after that one? No. Oh, in this entire season, one thing got loosely predicted.
Yeah.
Oh, hallelujah. It's where it gets like, come on, man.
Yeah.
It's a wide net. And then the next level gets even worse. Because
Mhm.
for me, it's an iceberg. That's the innocent level. That's
Mhm.
the, oh, I
Mhm.
took an episode that happened. Then you start getting the Photoshop, the AI. Oh,
Oh,
love
hate it.
making AI images
Oh
of
my
The
gosh.
Simpsons and it happening, and everyone's like,
Yeah.
"There's flooding in Dubai right now, flooding somewhere," and they're like, "The Simpsons predicted it." It's an AI image of
Mm.
Homer Simpson wearing like clothing from the Middle East, and he's standing in water, and it's his eyes are all messed up. There's another Homer Simpson off to the left, and everyone's like,
Yeah.
"There's your proof." I'm like, guys, who's believing this? Why are people
Yeah.
believing this? It's insane.
Yeah.
And it's just made to get clicks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I hate the Simpsons AI stuff because, first of all, if you are a Simpsons conspiracy theorist, then now you're just watering it down. You're just inventing fake things that they didn't even really reference, that they didn't really even do. So that's going to make it look like your entire premise is false now. Because if you have to do that just to get attention, again,
Yep.
they're just doing it, like you said, for clicks and views and likes and social media engagement. But also too, yeah, that one really because the first thing I always say whenever I see that, I always like I don't do it anymore, but I used to just like when I would see it, I comment, what episode is this from? Like,
Oh
like,
yeah.
like, what season? What season is this from? And then they can never answer that question. Like, oh yeah, because it's AI. They never did this. This never happened
Yeah.
on The Simpsons. As far as the President Trump stuff, that episode, interestingly enough, for all the people watching who want to like fact check this, I think it's called Bart to the Future, if I'm not mistaken. It's the episode title because I've researched this one a lot, and I remember when that episode came out when I was younger. Comes out in the year 2000. That
Yep.
year, Donald Trump is ran for president for the Reform Party. So he was
Yep.
like a third party candidate for
And he's
president
always
that year.
yes, up until the Republican candidate, he's always joked about running third party.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And so, like, the writers are probably thinking, like, did you hear Donald Trump might try to run for president? Oh man, that wouldn't it be so funny if he actually won one day? Wouldn't that be hilarious? Let's write that in the show. Oh yeah, Lisa's president right after Trump. Oh, she talks about President Trump. It's just like it's a joke. It's absurd.
Yeah.
It's a joke, and it's based off of something that was really happening in
And
the real world at that time.
and Bart to the Future, Back to the Future. Who is when he goes Back to the Future, it's based on Donald Trump's tower. Like that's what the jokes are doing. They're like, oh, Back to the Future, the reference of the bully becoming super rich is a reference to Donald Trump. Plus Donald Trump ran. That's such a funny joke. And people watching at the time
Yeah.
are like, ha ha. Now people are
Yeah.
like, they predicted it. It's like, bro, no, they were combining jokes together to make, oh God. And you can tell this to them all day and they don't care.
And they
They're going
won't
to be like,
believe it.
oh,
Yeah.
you're in on it. I'm like, in on what?
You're in on
What
it.
am I in on? I don't even, facts, logic. God, it's,
I'm in on facts. Yeah, no, Robert Zemeckis, the guy who directed Back to the Future, yeah, has said in multiple interviews that the Biff character in Back to the Future was based on Trump, like
yeah,
in the
yeah,
80s.
yes, that's his
Like
name.
on multiple, on multiple occasions. So yeah, that whole thing is, that's that. And yeah, I never even thought about that connection as well. That they're making that connection. That's a joke, an inside joke as well.
Yep.
It's craziness, man. Um, so we got a few more minutes left. I want to say that, like, look, there are big conspiracies, there are small conspiracies, there are conspiracies. Like, for instance, there's a conspiracy regarding the moon landing. This is probably my least favorite conspiracy theory
Mhm.
because I've seen the science. I'm not a scientist myself. I'm not a physicist, but I have a lot of people in my life who are, and I've seen overwhelming scientific evidence to prove that we've been to the moon. But we were talking about it when we were talking about doing our podcast about conspiracies. And the big conspiracy theory is that, oh, we just didn't go to the moon, we faked it to try to, like, win the space race against the Soviet Union.
Yes.
But the conspiracies, like you said, that's the tip of the iceberg. It
Yeah.
goes even further than that, doesn't it?
Yes. So, like, the big one is, honestly, if someone doesn't believe in the moon landing, I'm not angry about it because I'm like, you know what? Fair enough. We were in a space race against the Soviets. We wanted to prove them wrong. We lied to do it. Sure. That's the normal tip of the iceberg. But then you start getting to a little bit more wild ones where there's the aspect of, well, technically, we've never gone to the moon since. We've tried a few times, but we never really do because they saw something they weren't supposed to. There's actually the first belief is actually in a movie that came out in the 2000s. It was pretty
Mhm.
popular and like called Apollo 18, maybe something like that, where it's like
Yeah.
there's aliens on there. The rocks on the moon are aliens, and the rocks that they brought back to Earth, there's just aliens walking around on Earth now. Just so you know. Next one, there's a civilization. There is a something on the moon that is a mile tall that's been caught by cameras that we've never been told about. That this could be clipped and I would look like a crazy person. There's a mile tall thing on the moon that's been clipped by cameras, never been caught before, and we saw that when we went there and made a deal with the people on that planet to never talk about it again, or on the moon to never talk about it again, and we got sent back. Then there's the time travel aspect of it, where, like the Bermuda Triangle, you run into kind of a time void when you go through space and go to the moon. So there's actually a future human society on the moon who warned us about what's going to happen with the nukes. And that's why when we went back, we actually faked the moon landing footage because what we actually saw on the moon was so horrific that we couldn't show any of it, whether it's time travel, the tower, or the alien bugs. So whichever one you want to, yeah, there's a whole,
Just the rabbit hole,
yeah.
it goes so far down, and, like, I'm just like, and then there was one where, like, there's like, well, we went to the moon, but we didn't survive it, so all the astronauts are not really the ones who were actually there.
Oh yeah,
And then
so
there's
those, yes, yeah. So we didn't even make it to the moon. They died. So that's the other thing is they tried to go to the moon, they died. But that's why like Buzz Aldrin is so angry about it because it's his actor and he's lived so long. It's like the Paul McCartney aspect of it. Like Paul is dead, Buzz Aldrin's dead. This is his actor and he just happens to still be alive. That kind of stuff. It's
yeah,
absolutely nuts of like because then people debate it. They'll be like, well, no, like during launch, like we died in space. Others are like, no, they're still trapped on the moon to this day. They got captured, and the actors that they got back, dude. It's and it, that, but again, back to what we talked about all the way in the beginning. You've got the original conspiracy, right?
mhm,
People didn't like the aspect of we said we went to the moon. Here's the evidence. They said I don't like that. I think the moon
mhm,
landing's fake. Then someone went,
mhm.
I like that, but I don't like how you're saying that. It's not that simple. Actually, I think this happened. They go, I like that, but I think this happened due to time travel. I think this happened because of aliens. It's spreads off into a million things and creates
Yeah.
that massive iceberg.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane how many rabbit holes you can go down with that. And, like, with me, it's always like, well, if there was a secret civilization on the moon, like, you got the moon is there every couple of weeks. You can see it. Get a telescope. I feel like we've seen some evidence of that. And they're like, no, 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 no. They're on the dark side of the moon. You would never be able to see it. They're like they're on the other side. I'm like, oh, okay, man. I'll go with it. But yeah, it's so many crazy. And you mentioned, and I'm glad you mentioned this because this is the perfect place to end on. You mentioned the Paul McCartney thing.
Yeah.
And for people who don't know, and I went so far down this rabbit hole when I was in like college. It was insane how far I went. So there was this rumor that in the mid '60s, when the Beatles were at their absolute peak, biggest group in the world, that Paul McCartney like died. Like it was an accident. I think it was a car accident, something like that. And that
Yep.
the people over the band were like, well, we can't. We're making billions off these guys. We can't just allow the Beatles to not exist anymore. So they found someone, presumably a brother or a cousin, a relative, looks exactly like him, sounds like him, can sing just like him, and they just replaced him. And so the guy who today is Paul McCartney is a replacement. He's not the
Yep.
real Paul McCartney. That's of course the conspiracy theory. And apparently, in their infinite wisdom, the Beatles said, you know what, let's just screw with people's minds. They leave little secrets and little
Yes.
hints in their songs and their album
Paul
covers.
is dead.
They're
Yep.
telling you that he's dead. And of course, the biggest is the Abbey Road album cover, in which every character plays a different role in his funeral. And Paul doesn't have shoes on. He has a cigarette, which is supposed to be like, oh, that means he's dead. And it's like, it's this crazy rabbit hole. But more, and of course, I don't believe it. I've actually seen Paul McCartney in concert. And I
Oh, really?
remember, yeah,
Wings or Eagles?
no,
What?
I saw. Well, he had the group Wings, but I actually saw him just solo. This was like recent. This is like a couple of years ago.
Okay.
He has this band that he tours with, and he played a lot of great Beatles songs and some Wings songs. And I remember, like I was having such a good time, and in the middle, I had this like, what do you call it? Intrusive thought. This intrusive thought just hit me like in the middle of the show. What if that's not really him? What if this isn't the real Paul? And then it went away immediately because I was like, but he still sings so good, and this is such a
Yeah.
good
Who
show.
cares?
Does it really matter? Like I don't like. Apparently, I mean, if he took over at that point and he still made Hey Jude and all that, I was like, does it really matter? Like so I
Yeah.
don't believe in it. But have you heard the new conspiracy theory that the Beatles never existed?
I know. Oh my God. I know the whole. God, what's the one of It's the girl. She was blind and deaf, and they said she
Yeah.
never existed.
Helen Keller. There's
Helen-
a whole society of people that deny Helen Keller, or
Yep.
they at least they deny that she was both blind and deaf, and that we're being lied about that, which is insane.
Yeah.
But yes, this is similar to that. It's not necessarily that the Beatles like never existed, like oh like just like the people
Is it
everybody
just
from
like
the
a
'60s is lying.
concept, like the Beatles as a concept existed, but it was never four guys. It was always
Yeah,
just random people getting brought in to make the
yeah,
song, and these four guys
yeah,
were just the front men of it. And it was all
yeah.
fake. That's my
Yeah,
guess. Is
that's like
it,
100% the conspiracy. And I
it's
honestly think
boring.
that
That's boring. We've seen that
that's
before. We've
super
seen a
boring.
conspiracy like that before. That's not fun and creative. That's too
No,
boring.
it's a terrible conspiracy theory too because it really just comes from and it comes I think like really young people have come up with this one and it's because today they can't fathom the concept of four guys making
Yeah.
all that music pretty much on their own. I mean, they had producer George Martin, they had
Yeah.
a couple of other people, but four guys being predominantly responsible for all that music, two guys mainly writing all of it. They just can't fathom the concept of that because today it takes like 10 people to write the most basic pop song you ever heard. And so like they just can't fathom the idea that
Yeah.
four guys from Liverpool just did all that music in in that really short time period of just the '60s.
Yeah.
They can't even fathom it, and so they have to come
Well,
up with this conspiracy that there had to be like 100 people involved in that, and there's no other way,
and the other issue is nowadays it's honestly it's almost a catch-22.
Mhm.
It is so easy to go viral now, but it's
Yeah,
so short-lived.
yeah,
Back then, it was much harder to go viral, but it would last years. So
yeah,
Queen comes out with these massive songs, and now they're having movies still made about them years after with Freddie Mercury. Same with the Beatles. They're still having
mhm,
because it was such a cultural phenomenon, right? Now you could reach just as many people that the Beatles did in
mhm.
5 days with a
Oh yeah,
viral post. But people stop caring after a week because another person just did it. It's
yeah,
way more short lived. It's with bands as well. Like I mean, it's no like Ice Spice, right? The amount of people she has reached in such a short amount of time, thanks to social media and all of this and all of that. She's in the Barbie movies with her song. She's in all this, and now people are writing fall off videos about her, saying
yep,
she fell off. She was the talk of the town. She was like the baby for a couple months, like a year or two, and now a small little side note in the history books
yeah,
compared to like the Beatles who are so big. It's hard for us to understand. We see music artists come and go like
yep,
that, right? The biggest ones we've got are like Drake, right? We're like, oh
yeah,
yeah, he's been around for a while, but he gets roasted by
yeah.
Kendrick Lamar, So it's so hard to make a concept of how do these four dudes in a band make such a cultural impact that we're still talking about it to this
Yeah,
day? How did someone
yeah,
like Elvis have such a cultural
yep,
impact that people talk about the Queen, all of this stuff? It's like, how did those bands have such? It's because not as much was going on. How if someone came up with a conspiracy of Bigfoot today, it would
Hmm.
die in an instant
Oh
because
yeah.
it's just there's too much stuff going on. Back then there was such a small enough stuff. You had such a mainstream of media delivering you this one thing on four different channels, and it was the same thing on all four channels. It can make it go bigger. Now it's you just have it's so oversaturated now. You could reach just as many people quicker, but it's going to last a short amount of time and not be talked about nearly as much a few years
Yeah.
later.
I think it was, and this is a perfect place to end. I think it was Andy Warhol who said, in the future, everybody's going to get 15 minutes of fame. Or I don't remember if it's 15 minutes or 15 seconds. Everybody's going to get 15 minutes of fame. And social media is 100% an example of that. Like you said, it's so easy to get that initial, viral video or viral clip. But how do you sustain that the way the Beatles did, the way Michael Jackson did, the way somebody like that did?
Yeah,
It's seemingly impossible. It's seemingly impossible these days. But Jake, this
yeah,
was an incredible conversation. I'm so happy we had it. And of course, we still have this idea of doing an entire podcast about conspiracy theories, breaking them down
yeah.
individually. I mean, we'd have so
More
much fun
focused.
because
Yeah,
yeah, more focused on like individuals because we covered a lot of ground today, and I'm sure both of our audiences will enjoy it. But yeah, tell people where they can find you on social media, where they can find your content at.
Mostly if you're a history fan, TikTok is the big spot. I've got other social medias as well. On like YouTube, I'll talk history and build Lego sets sometimes. Just my name, Jake Trumper, Trumper. You can find me across all social medias.
Awesome. Jake, and everybody at home watching this, if you want me and Jake to do more of this, let us know. Go in the comments, like the video, let us know because we can totally make a whole podcast off of just this, like
Millions
100%.
of conspiracies.
Exactly. We'd be doing this for like years. We'd be doing this like just
Yeah.
for absolutely for years, just like every week, just like me and Jake just breaking down your favorite conspiracy theories or your least favorite, like his with the Simpsons and mine's with the Beatles was fake. I terrible conspiracies, but we'll break them down nevertheless. Jake, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Dude, thanks for having me, man.